just came from the Board of Equalization meeting. There's I guess a larger preliminary certification, larger than the one for the year that we're currently working on, but I'll let you put it in your words, but are we safe to say Oklahoma's not quite out of the woods in terms of, budget constrictions?
Well, it's not a revenue problem at this point. The problem is making up one-time sources of revenue that were used out of necessity to make the budget balance the last few years. So from a revenue standpoint, Oklahoma's faring pretty well, especially relatively speaking, but we still have some replacement that we need to do, and so that's going to be the challenge this budget year.
One of the longer discussions during the meeting had to do with OHLAP. Can you explain exactly what the board did?
Yeah, well, first off, OHLAP's a great program, and it really is helping Oklahomans attain college, and it's really encouraging them to do well in school, and it's got a better rate for retention and graduation, so it's a really great program and fully supported by all members of the Equalization Board. But when you have a $15 million trust fund sitting there for use when you go over or under, I should say, what the projections are, and you're getting so close to the estimate. I mean, in the last few years, they've been, within just a couple of percentage points of their estimate, which is a great job of forecasting on their part. It just doesn't look like those monies are going to be needed in that large of an amount. And so we wanted to draw down some of that reserve trust fund for use to fully fund the scholarships for the next fiscal year. And
there's roughly how much in there now, and how much of that will you be using?
There's $15 million in the fund, which is over 20% of what they're requesting. $63 million was the request for fiscal year 13 to fully fund the scholarships. What we did was we lowered that amount by $6 million and drew $6 million down out of the trust fund.
Do you see the roughly $9 million that would remain if all projections are correct as being the sort of minimum amount, or might this be something that's done again in a future year?
Well, we'll reevaluate it next year. But certainly if they keep getting within 1 or 2 percentage points of the estimate, which I hope they do, then it's going to be more than enough to cover the unexpected increases.
And what if, I don't know that agencies necessarily come to you, but if they do come to you, what do you tell them in terms of what can they expect this budget year? Are we talking about a standstill budget, or will there be, we always talked about the core areas of government that got cut less. Might they get cut less again, or maybe an increase?
Well, certainly if I could write the budget by myself, it would be a little bit different than what we end up with. I think everybody would probably say that. I think the term this year is flat. It's going to be a pretty flat budget year, which honestly should be some good news to some agencies who haven't seen a flat budget in a while in the last few years. So flat is good compared to where we have been the last few years. I think we can do a better job of prioritization into those core services, and so I wouldn't say that every agency or every group that gets funding from the government is going to have a flat budget year. Hopefully, we'll see some reprioritization and some redirection of some funds into the core functions.
A lot of people have been comparing where Oklahoma is now to, say, fiscal year 2007 or 2008. I guess it would be fiscal year 2008, the last year before the crisis really hit. Right. Do you see the goal to ever return to those funding levels? In other words, every department will come to you and say, hey, we want to be back where we were at 2008.
I don't think the goal is to return to any level of funding. I think the goal needs to be to properly fund the four functions of government. So returning, whether any entity wants to return to 08 or 03 or whatever it may be, that can't be our goal. Our goal has to be properly funding those things on which our citizens depend, whatever that level of funding may be. I think some areas don't need to return to a level of funding. They need to be reduced further, and some need an increase over what they had in 2008. So that cannot be our marker.